Hello, everyone. I am so excited to be here. If you are someone who is a senior leader, whether you're director, VP, senior professional with more than 15 years of experience, and you're watching your peers with half your experience move up faster, or you're constantly hearing from your leadership team that they will promote you and you never get promoted, or maybe you're in a space where you're looking for another opportunity, but when you get in front of a recruiter and you explain what you've done, they don't really comprehend the value that you bring to the table. My name is Nana Bohendi, and I coach leaders into director, VP, and C-level roles. And today I have a special treat for you. My friend Maria Malik is here with me. She is the founder of the Introverted Speaker. She's been coaching senior executives for more than 6 years on how to be heard without becoming someone they're not. So today we're going to be talking about how to overcome this hurdle that's keeping you from growing in your career. And we are going to tell you about an amazing initiative that we are holding in Toronto in person. That's going to be a great opportunity for you to practice how to be a great communicator, how to think on your feet, how to portray the executive presence. But mostly in this live, if you listen all the way till the end, you are going to get a lot of value. Hey, Maria is not always on my lives, so this is a really great opportunity for you to soak it all in. All right,
Maria. Super excited for this, Nada.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to actually start with a story, Maria, of someone who reached out to me today, because I think you're going to be able to weigh in and give a lot of advice on how to navigate the situation. And I bet you there's a lot of leaders who are listening who are in this same, situation. So I had a guy who reached out to me. He has almost 30 years of experience. And one of the things that he shared with me is that he is being perceived as someone who is not, a senior leader and is more of a jack of all trades. And his thoughts are that as long as he networks, as long as he puts himself in front of decision makers, he is going to be able to convert those interviews. But it's been a week. And he said to me that before, all of this happened with AI, it wouldn't even be a week and he'd get an opportunity. What do you believe, based on your experience and helping so many people in your work, that could be the problem here?
Yeah, great question, Nada. So, you know what this reminds me of? Like, I think about surgeons, for example. Surgeons specialize in something. And, like, for example, if you're a heart doctor or you are like a surgeon, so you end up being more in demand, you get paid more, you just everything I think in life-wise is a lot easier than you might be like a generalist. It's someone that has a clinic. So it kind of reminds me of the same thing, because I think when you specialize in one thing, it actually just makes it easier for you to fall into place, especially where you need to be. So what you said here, jack of all trades. And to be honest, Nat, I used to think of myself as that as well. And when I first started my business, I was on LinkedIn, I was on Instagram, TikTok. I was trying to do it all. I was on YouTube. I was like, okay, let me try this. Let me try this. Let me try this. Because I also thought, I was like, okay, I was a jack of all trades. And it wasn't until I quit everything and I went all in on LinkedIn, I learned everything inside and out, that things took off for me.
Yeah.
So I think the fact that he's saying he's good at so many things is just making it seem like, maybe he's not that great, as he's not going to be as great as a leader, because the higher up you go, it does require a very different level of skill set. So if you can get better at one thing and be known for that one thing, I think you will always be in demand. It doesn't matter what happens with AI. It doesn't matter who else is in competition with you. Get better at one thing. That one thing should be what you are dominating at. And I think if you can do that, then you're golden. You're good to go. So that's something I think he definitely needs to look into. What is that one thing that I can perfect and be known for? And I think he'd get jobs much easier that way.
Yeah, I agree with you. having helped over 1,000 leaders navigate, career transitions, this is the biggest fear that leaders have, is for them to pick a lane, because they're scared that what that's going to do is it's going to limit their options. Now, I think what's going on here is people confuse picking a lane and a niche with actually promoting themselves as someone with only a single skill set versus a multidimensional leader. The reality is, when a recruiter is looking for the right person, they're looking for a specific person who is able to solve a specific problem at an organization. Now, it doesn't mean that you don't have multiple skills to be able to solve that problem. So if we go back to the analogy of both of us, Maria, right? I mean, you picked a lane for yourself. You're an executive communication coach who coaches, leaders in the corporate world, but it doesn't mean that you're not good at, for example, helping people own their brand, right? Or be great at becoming storytellers or helping them with their positioning. You have all of these skill sets, and that's what makes you really great at being able to coach people when it comes to their executive communication. It's the same thing with me. One of the skills that I have is really helping people figure out what role to focus on, what is their value proposition, what is their gift. Another skill set of mine is helping people convert their interviews into offers by owning their story. I have multiple skill sets, but I'm not going to start saying I am this and I am that and I'm 10 different things, right? So that's the thing that I think is valuable for people to understand. Like if we take Steve Jobs, for example, he's good at making complex technology feel simple, desirable, and emotionally meaningful. He has a very clear value proposition. And when a recruiter wants to know where you fit in, you have to be able to articulate that. That is awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Now, my next question for you is, when you get a client who reaches out to you, what is like the most common challenge that you see that blocks leaders move up and get to the next level?
Yeah, that's a good one, Nana. First of all, Nana, just going back to what we were talking about before we continue, I am so niche now that I only help introverted leaders. So it's not just
Yeah.
a coach for anyone in the corporate world, it's specifically for a personality type. And once I figured that out, because that's who I was, and I kind of figured out, okay, if I think this way, someone else is thinking this way, and they have the same problem. So niching down to that specific person is what really helped me get really good at my craft as well. So just to point that out first. But going back to your question, so one of the most common problems that a lot of people have when they get on a phone call with me and they want to work with me is that, Maria, I have all these ideas, I have all these thoughts, but put me in front of a big audience, put me in front of seniors, and it's like I don't know how to articulate my thoughts better. So why is it that I can think of all these things? And I do feel like it's a very introverted personality type of problem, because we think a lot, we process very deeply. So when they come to me and they say, I don't know how to articulate my thoughts, I don't know how to put all these amazing ideas into words and make people really understand it, I can't be direct, I can't be someone that simplifies things, it just sounds so weird. And because of that, I'm losing opportunities. I'm losing those jobs. I'm losing those promotions. I'm losing even relationships in some sense. So that's the number one problem that I see, which is why as soon as we start working together, the first thing I cover in my program is different types of frameworks. And if you'd like, Nat, I can actually talk about one of the frameworks that I focus heavily on. So frameworks are a great way to structure your thoughts. It's to make sure that you're not rambling. It's to make sure you have some direction when you're speaking. So for example, one of the simplest frameworks you can follow is PRI, point, reason, impact. Start with your point. A lot of people, what they do, especially juniors, is they'll give you backstories. They'll give you all these different examples before they hit the point. So if you want to speak like a leader, if you want to sound like a leader, start with your point. Then give the reason. What is the reason behind that? Because That's typically, again, that's usually what people circle around the most. Give your reason. And then one thing most people don't do is the impact. How does that impact everyone? Why am I even bringing this up? Why is this important? Why is this something that should be looked at? Stop with the impact. So PRI, point, reason, impact. It's going to completely change the way that you sound. So that's a framework that I like to teach my clients. And I just highly recommend learning frameworks. It's just going to give you direction at the end of the day.
Absolutely. And I believe that what we're going to teach in this workshop is quite complementary, because here's what I believe. Part of why people ramble is because they don't feel confident in their message, right? There's two aspects of it. There's they don't think people are going to care about what they have to say. And then there is the aspect of they don't know how to structure their message in an engaging way. So you are amazing at helping people present the information in an engaging way. And then the prerequisite to that is you have to believe in your message, right? If you don't communicate about topics that you are interested in, or the type of work that you do is not engaging to you, then of course you're not going to be a great communicator, and you're not going to be feeling confident because you don't have that mastery in the work that you do. So 100%, the prerequisite is you need to be in a role that's within your mastery. Equally, you also need to work on how you communicate, because it's not just what you say, it's also how you say it. And I definitely agree with you that professionals sometimes ramble because they don't get to the point. So that framework that you've shared is extremely helpful. So I want to tell you something that happened to me. When I was 35 and I was in a 6-figure leadership role at a top consulting firm, and I had a great boss, I was on really great initiatives. I had a situation where I was doing a presentation, and I got to the point, but the feedback that I was given after the presentation was my tone was very clinical. So if I were your client and I was getting your advice, what would you say to me that I needed to work on so that I wouldn't be in the situation where I would come out of this, presentation and people are upset with me and I'm getting this feedback that my tone was too clinical?
Yeah, of course. When I work with my clients, that we have a whole lesson on just tonality itself, because that's a huge part of how you speak and how people perceive you when you're speaking. So when it comes to tonality, it really depends on where you are in your career. So if you want to sound like a leader, you have to have something called the executive tone. Now, that's very different, and it's kind of the opposite of a monotone. So we all know what monotone sounds like. It's like, hi, my name's Maria. This is what I do, and I help introverted leaders.
I already fell asleep.
If you want to go to sleep. Yeah, exactly. It's great if you want to go to sleep. But the executive tone, it's a little bit different. It's also not on the opposite side. The opposite side is where people are just like, oh, hi, my name is this. That's more junior. It sounds more exciting. And it's a life party, but it's not necessarily the executive tone. So the executive tone, it's something that is steady, but there's still variations in that. So you're still breaking patterns. So you're like increasing your volume at times. You're like, hi, everyone. My name's Maria Malik. And then you're bringing your volume down. So you're focusing on your volume. You're focusing on your words, emphasizing some words. So for example, if I was talking about public speaking, I wouldn't just say, public speaking is a great skill to have. Everyone should learn public speaking. That's very monotone. Guys, public speaking, it's a very important skill to have. Everyone should get better at public speaking. You hear that should, how it's like exaggerated. That's what you want to do with your executive tone. So you do want to exaggerate. You want to increase your volume. Again, you want to exaggerate some words. And the last thing is you want to change up your pace. Sometimes you want to speak a little bit slower. Sometimes you're going to have to speed up a little bit. Again, have that variation. If you do everything just in that one monotone, then that's it. But actually, Nada, this reminds me of a story. So I'd love to tell you this story. And I love telling this story because I think that's the day I realized, wow, speaking is so important. Yeah. So when I was in university, I had to 8 a.m. classes, one on Monday, one on Tuesday. I'm a political science and English major. The class on Monday was one of my English literature classes, nothing exciting. And then the class on Tuesday, again, 8 a.m., was about world politics, specifically conflict in the Middle East. And I was like, oh, that's going to be cool. That's going to be fun. So I joined both classes. One thing I did was attend all classes, whether I'm falling asleep or what. I attended my classes. So when I started attending these classes, the 8 a.m. class on Monday was full, and so was the other one. As the semester kept progressing, the 8 a.m. literature class, we started to see more people coming in, and it was overflowing with people. And you had people sitting on the stairs, people that were not even part of the class were attending this. Versus the second one, as the semester was going by, I think I was one of 10 people left in an auditorium of at least 50, 60 people. And the biggest difference was the way that the professors presented their topics. The first one had great tonality. He would make the most basic, simple things sound like, wow, that's so cool. Versus the world politics professor, he was so monotone. He was so monotone that I was like, when you're like falling asleep and you're like trying to hold your head up, that was me. Like he's talking about war, conflict, but he made the most interesting topic sound so boring. And that's when I realized, I'm like, wow, the tonality between both these professors is what is changing the delivery. Absolutely. So that's a story I love telling, because if you sound monotone, if you don't have that variation, people will not want to listen to you.
That's Simple great. That's great. And I've been in those classes where you want to fall asleep. It was my 8:30 a.m. class in engineering school. Man, that guy's tone was definitely monotone.
Yeah. Gosh. That's something I had to work on a lot. I was because like being introverted and everything, I was super quiet. My voice was like down here. So I had to really work on that. And it's completely changed the way that I sound. So definitely work on your tonality. That's a big one.
Yeah.
That's something we're going to be covering actually in detail in our
in-person workshop in Toronto. Mm-hmm. When is it again? May 12th, right?
Week. Oh my gosh, I'm a little nervous.
It's a week from now. So exactly a week from now. Pretty crazy.
So I started my business during COVID. So when that happened, I just naturally started to do more online stuff, and I just kind of got comfortable with that. I was like, okay, let's just keep it that way. So it's been a while since I've done an in-person event. So I'm super, super excited for it. I know it's going to be a completely different vibe, completely different energy, but I'm super excited. What are you looking forward to the most, Nada?
Oh my goodness. Well, first of all, I will say like almost 8 people who are my clients are attending, and it's going to be amazing to actually meet them in person.
Absolutely.
I just thought of something based on what you shared with me in terms of being remote. I think a lot of people since COVID got used to doing everything remotely and have difficulty building rapport with their coworkers. One of my clients just shared this with me. I asked her, what are some of your challenges when it comes to, let us say, communicating in meetings? Let's say update meetings, for example. And she said, I worry that the information that I share is not going to be relevant or simple enough for my peers to understand. So I asked her a lot of questions, and it really boiled down to, do you talk to your peers outside of these meetings? And she said no. And I was a little surprised, because if that relationship was built outside of those meetings, and that context would be there for her to know whether the information she's sharing is relevant or not. And I think we have gotten into a state where we have this discomfort when it comes to networking with people, reaching out to people, and building relationships. What is some of the advice that you give your clients? And have you noticed a difference with clients who came to you, who said to you, I don't get along with my coworkers, I don't get along with my peers, I butt heads with them, or I don't feel like I've built enough trust with my leadership team? What was like the before and after when it comes to working with you in these situations?
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up, Nada, because it's so relevant to what's happening right now. But the biggest thing with my clients is when they come in, because again, they're introverted, I think there's such a big misconception where people feel like they have to get to know everybody and they have to speak to everybody. You do have to be very strategic when it comes to your communication with people too, because especially as an introvert, there's only so much energy that you have. So instead of focusing on being liked by everybody, instead of focusing on being buddy buddy with everyone, focus on a couple of relationships. And honestly, relationships that matter, because at the end of the day, again, you only have so much energy. So focus on specific relationships. I had this one client that she's very introverted, and she's like, Maria, I hate going to, those, like they invite me to like happy hour after work. And she's like, sometimes I'll go and I'm just like, why am I here? I'd rather be at home. And then instead I was like, why don't you start just meeting up with your boss, like go for a coffee chat, just you guys go one-on-one. And she actually really enjoyed those. And she built such a good relationship with her boss, and her boss ended up putting her, up for a promotion just after
Wow.
months. So I was like, see, and she's happy at the same time, she's building relationships. So you don't have to do things you don't like. Just be a bit more strategic, because it's also about like people. And Nada, this is what people don't understand about introverts. We are so low with energy. Okay. First of all, like it's such a crazy thing. Like I will do one meeting and then I need at least an hour to recharge after that.
Yeah.
So be strategic with who you're meeting with. Be strategic with where you're spending your energy, especially if you're an introvert, because wherever you spend your energy, like that is what's going to come back to you 10 times, right? So pick and choose. Instead of just being buddy buddy with everyone, find those few people that you're like, what? These are the people that I like. We have something in common. Do try to find extroverted friends. I feel like that really helps at work as well. So focus on a few people, and that's going to help you a lot.
Wonderful. I like that advice. And friends, if you're listening, pop in a question that you want us to answer. We have 5 minutes and we want to make sure that we also answer your questions. Whether you end up coming to our event or not, we'd love to help you. And while people are, thinking of their questions and plopping them in the chat, I want to ask you a question that one of my clients, shared with me as well. So he works at a company called MongoDB. He was a former developer. He is a product leader now. And one of the things that he shared with me is that when he comes to meetings, he finds it very difficult to think on his feet. So his boss and let's say a cross-functional team member would have these conversations. They would go at a very fast pace. And he has a hard time keeping up and engaging in the conversation. But then what ends up happening is he absorbs all this information, leaves the meeting, and then writes an email versus being able to provide the answer on the spot. And what that has been costing him is obviously a lot of time, a lot of opportunity to influence and build those relationships in the meeting. So what would your advice be for someone like him? And what is something that you're going to teach in the workshop that's going to address that?
Yeah, I love that question, Nana. It's something I actually just posted about recently. I think it was yesterday, where I was talking about, no, actually it's today, where I was talking about how I was always the quiet one in the meetings. You'd have people just go back and forth. And, as an introvert, especially, it would take me time to think about what I want to say, how I want to say it, how I want to present it. And then by the time I got to it, that time would pass. And you have all these people, again, bouncing ideas. A decision has already been made and we've moved forward. So I do recommend introverts to sometimes send out emails instead, but of course, the magic really happens in those meetings. So if you're missing out on that moment, then it just kind of kills that momentum for you. So what I would recommend is, I love this little trick that I do. If everyone is talking, if everyone is kind of going back and forth, first of all, don't try to chime in on everything, right? Pick one or two things that you feel like, hey, this is something I'd really want to contribute, and say someone's name. I think, let's say we're all sitting in a meeting and there's a whole bunch of people talking. A great way to get in is say, David, I actually really like what you said. And then once you have everyone's attention, then you can proceed to say what you need to say. So I think calling out people by their name, not necessarily like, hey, David, stop talking, more like, David, that's a great point. Always compliment people too. because people like to hear compliments. People like to hear their name psychologically. So when they hear that, they pause and they turn to you and they listen. So if you can do something like that, say their name, compliment them, and then get your point in, because that's when, again, people are sitting and listening to you. That's a great way to get in there without being rude, without feeling like, okay, how do I get in here? What do I say? I think that's something that's very simple to do, easy to do, and everyone can do it.
100%. One of the things that I taught at the Scrum Alliance, which is for those of you who are not nerds like me and know about Agile, it's basically the equivalent of, let's say, the PMI, but for Agile and Scrum. I taught something called the doctor frame technique, because I believe that there is a misconception that when you're in a meeting, in an interview, you have to come up with the answer right away. And the power is in the pause. The power is also in diagnosing the intention behind these questions and what problem are we solving here. When you sit down in a doctor's office, you notice they don't give you a solution right away. They diagnose you, they ask you a lot of questions. And actually, there is nothing wrong with you being the one who asks a lot of questions, recaps your understanding, and that will actually help you come up with the answer. And sometimes you don't need to come up with the answer, to be quite frank. If you recap the information and sit with the pause and ask the person, well, what do you think we should do? All of a sudden, your audience is going to tell you what they need from you, and you'll be able to respond effectively. So these are all techniques that we're going to teach in the workshop. The thing is, we can give you all the knowledge, right? You can find that knowledge very easily if you chat GPT it, if you watch a bunch of videos. But the biggest hurdle is actually being able to practice it in a simulated environment. And that's what we're going to do in the workshop. It is on Tuesday, May 12th, next week. It is in Toronto downtown. If you are interested in the workshop, this is what I'm going to do. This is not something that I do often. I'm going to open up my calendar. You can jump on a call with me and you can ask me questions about this workshop, and then we can decide if it's a fit for you or not. Up front, I'll tell you that the workshop right now there's limited tickets for $70. The workshop is normally $100. It is more than 2 hours. Okay, you're going to get a lot of value. You're going to network with people. And this is a one of a kind. You are not going to find a workshop like this. Not with Simon Sinek, not with anyone, because it's going to be a very intimate group of people, less than 30 people, and you're going to get direct feedback from us. So I really encourage you to jump on this opportunity. Any last words, Maria?
Just that I am very excited for it. Like I said, I haven't done something like this in a while, and I know that this is going to be very, very valuable, especially for people that are kind of tired of doing things online all the time. This is your opportunity to show up for yourself and to learn something, to practice, to network, get out of your comfort zone. I know my introverts out there are like, oh my God, what do you mean meet people? That's why we've kept it small. We want it to be intimate. We want to be able to meet you guys. We want to be able to speak to you guys. And we want it to be in a way that you learn something and you walk out feeling like, okay, I learned a lot. This is something I can apply tomorrow. So it's going to be very valuable. I'm very excited for it. I can't wait. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to have food. We're going to have lots of, mixing and mingling, everybody talking and stuff. So it's going to be very interactive. So if you're in Toronto, if you are especially working in downtown, all you do is you just, right after work, you just hop on over on a train or walk over. It's in a very prime location, and you just come and see us. So yeah,
beautiful.
Looking forward to it.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for listening in. As I mentioned, if you have any questions, either DM me or you can book a call on my profile. All you have to do is visit my profile and then click on book an appointment. Very simple. And then we are going to see you there, hopefully.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. I'm super excited. And please let us know if you have any questions. We'd love to answer them for you.
All right.